Welcome and welcome back to another episode of The Bookshelf, where we are currently enjoying the Spinks Jinx. This is the story of Nova Malikah Spinks, the wife of Leon Spinks, the boxer from back in the day. Chapter 18. It was warm and sunny. I took my shoes off for the walk to the terminal and let the warm, sweet-smelling breeze wash over me. We were bombarded by reporters running out of the plane asking questions, some of them in slow, determined English, while the rest of them were taking pictures. There was one thing I knew about Hank Grooms. He always managed to get himself in all the pictures, either by pushing his way through others or grabbing something of mine to carry just as the shutters would click. After we went inside the airport, we were walking very fast as we could, without running down steps to collect our bags with the newsmen still running behind us. One of them ran up in front of us, pointed to me, and asked if I was his girlfriend. Leon stopped with everyone else following suit and snarled, "No, motherfucker. This is not my goddamn girlfriend. This is my fucking wife. You bastards got some nerve. Come on, mama." Leon snatched my arm, pulling me along as if I was a child. And Jared wedged himself between Leon and the reporter and told him that Leon was just edgy and was tired from the trip and that he would talk to them later. Leon put his hand on Jerry's shoulder, turned him around, and said, "You don't have to apologize for me, motherfucker." And Jerry looked at Leon and walked away. After looking at me to see I was grinning at him, Leon sat Malika and I down and went to help with the luggage. When we walked out to waiting cars, I found that we had to drive for another 45 minutes before I could come close to lying down. Norburn was up front with the driver. Malika and I were in the back. Leon stuck his head through the car window and said that he would be right behind me in another car, so not to worry. I nodded to him, half hearing what he said. I was wiped out. I wasn't too tired to notice how beautiful everything was, and I peeked through the window to see that we were making our way up a mountain with no guardrails anywhere. That made me nervous, and I wasn't sleepy anymore. I tried to express to the driver how I felt, asking was there another route he could take to get us to San Remo, Italy. The driver looked at me and in barely detectable English and with a slight attitude said, "This way is ours," as he continued on up the mountain road. The view was breathtaking. The town that we'd left I now saw nestled down in the mountainside, surrounded by the sea's emerald green waters beating up against its shores. We all stopped talking about the view when the driver began smiling and started looking also, as if he had never seen it, and came close to the edge of the cliff. Norburn turned around and looked at me, mouth agape with that "Did you see that shit?" look on his face. After that, we were all silent the rest of the way so our driver could concentrate on his driving. We stopped once to go through customs so our papers could be checked, and after the curious stares we received from the guards, they released us and let us pass on into Italy. Going past the borderline that divided the two countries, after passing the road signs for Rome and Lourdes, our driver finally made his way up a red brick driveway that led to the hotel, slowing down in front of a large building painted white. It looked like a larger scale southern mansion, except the tobacco and pine trees were replaced with palm and banana trees. My eyes traveled up to see the name Royal Hotel San Remo. The driver continued around the building to a large courtyard and stopped. I'd lost sight of Leon's car a few miles back, but just as I was getting out of the car, Leon and the rest pulled up. Seems he had been held up at customs for autographs once the guards realized who he was. When I walked into the hotel, I felt like I'd gone through a time warp and had gone back 50 years. It looked like some place that a Bogart movie could have been filmed. With all the magic, intrigue, and regal beauty with high ceilings, antique furniture, bay windows, hardwood floors, and exotic rugs. I found out that it had a very formal dining room that you had to dress for: white dinner jacket or tux, gowns, and tea-length dresses, no jeans allowed. We were to stay in Europe a little over 2 weeks. Every one of those days was filled with Jerry doing different and all very annoying things. In every case, I couldn't believe the dumb, slick, and stupid things that he would do. Jerry would throw his weight around as much as he could with everybody else, yelling at them as if they had tails, and he would say, "Where's Lee at? What's wrong with you? I want to know where he is every minute. I want you to watch him like he's a baby. Do you understand me?" Hardly anyone like Jerry could see that he was into that big eye, little you syndrome. I was even more dismayed to see Leon swept away with all of it. When everyone that mattered to me had their room keys and I made sure that Malika and Norburn were settled in. I started rushing to my room to find the bed, and that's when I noticed Leon behind me. I thought that he had a room on the same floor, and that's what he was looking for, but then again, that's what I thought. I was surprised to learn that Leon and I would be sharing quarters on this trip. At one time, that would have made me happy as a lark, but now, in a strange way, this annoyed me to no end. I didn't want to be the babysitter for Leon, and because he had a fight, I knew I wouldn't be able to help myself. At that moment, I was too tired to try to sort things out or protest this change in how we always did things. When we walked into the suite, the first thing I noticed was the bedroom. It was enormous with hardwood floors throughout, ceiling fans, and huge, round top windows that ran from the floor to the ceiling that faced the sea. The next thing I noticed was long cords hanging in most of the rooms. Leon and I walked through the rooms and began pulling cords, and no bells sounded at all. We looked at each other, shrugged our shoulders, and began to undress, so I could at last get to bed. I was standing in my bra and slip when I saw the door open and in walked maids, valets, room service, a masseur, and a driver standing in the room looking at us smiling. I ran for my robe and Leon and I looked at each other wide-eyed trying to figure out what had happened, but then we realized that the cords that we pulled earlier summoned all. We tried to explain, but that was impossible since we were trying to do it in English and they were trying to respond in Italian. Finally, one of the maids turned and said something to everyone. They smiled and nodded and began walking through the rooms and stood by what cord called who. Leon and I gave the okay sign that everyone understood, and they all filed out of the room. In the time we spent in San Remo, I learned that the maids would come in and out of the room at any time to check to see if something was used and checking the mini refrigerator that was in every room. The rooms were kept fully stocked with cheese, bread, fruit, and booze. If one thing was missing, even a cracker, they would run in like little elves and replace it. When I at last got to lie down, it was wonderful. I opened the windows, and the sea breezes rushed in, blowing the sheer curtains that hung from the windows all the way over to the bed space, which was two twin-sized beds pushed together, and would brush across your body on the way back down. It was very soothing, and quickly lulled me to sleep. I don't know how many hours I slept. It was late in the day, and knocking on the door pulled me out of my slumber. Leon opened the door, and in walked this older black guy with dinner. He was Leon's cook, another surprise that I didn't know about. Apparently, the cook had been flown over before we came, along with a locker full of steaks to set up his things in the space that the hotel allowed him in their kitchen. Yes, I was taken aback to see that the cook was male. I knew that Leon had nothing to do with that choice. As an afterthought, Leon lamented, "You know, baby, it was done as a safety precaution so nothing could be slipped into my food or drink to try to hurt me that way." After I heard that, I insisted that Malika and Norburn have their meals with Leon and me because after New Orleans, I knew what lengths people would go to when a prize fight was on the block. I stood by the window looking at the people below and feeling the warm breezes and thought no matter how pretty the view was from the window, I just knew that it had to be better up close. I dressed and left to find Malika to take in some of the sights. And when the door opened, it was just in time for me to hear Jerry ask Malika how much a gold chain cost that she wore around her neck and asked her who bought it for her. Malika never stopped smiling at him as she started to answer him. Malika wasn't a rich woman, but she'd always worked. She could well afford to buy anything that she wanted without having to answer to anyone, and by all means not to Jerry. When I heard Jerry's interrogation of Malika, my blood seemed to rush to my head. I went off, walking up to him, finger poised and ready to point before I came to a full stop and said, "Jerry, who in the hell do you think you are? Wait, let's change that. I already know that you're a sick bastard, and believe me, you're not all of that to be up in my friend's face. You don't know her, and her business is none of yours. Where's your wife? She's not enough to keep you busy? Or is it simply because Malika is with me? Are you trying to get something else to stick on me so you can run to Leon like a little bitch? I can't believe your black ass, and I'm going to tell something myself as soon as I find Leon. You're all the way out of order." While all of this was happening, Leon came in and walked over to us and asked, "What the hell is going on?" I told him what had me so hot. Leon looked at Jerry and began to yell at him louder than I ever could. "Sawyer, what the fuck is wrong with you, man?" Jerry just stood there mute, looking down at the floor and occasionally glancing in Leon's face, while Leon blessed his soul. Leon shook his head after getting no response from Jerry and walked through the lobby and out of the hotel with Jerry tagging behind him. After that, there wasn't one place that Malika and I could go where I didn't turn around to spot Jerry someplace in the area. Whenever Leon and I were together just laughing and talking, Jerry made it his business to join us, no matter how insulting Leon or I would become toward him. His wife was always with her daddy and never made an effort to retrieve her husband to give us some peace. Leon was going around with Jerry again, hurling insults at him when a man walked up smiling, and after a few minutes, we figured out that he wanted an autograph for his son. Leon took the paper and pen, looked in the man's face, and said, "That's one ugly kid you got there. He got the longest nose and the biggest ears that I've seen since Dumbo." So stupid. The man continued to smile and nod his head. I couldn't help but to laugh at this while telling Leon that he shouldn't do it. Leon said, "Oh, come on, Mama. They probably do the same thing to us and worse. We don't know what the hell they say either." He was right about that, but I still felt guarded about it. After all, we could run into somebody that knew just enough English to realize that they had been insulted. We made plans to go into the village to do some shopping before Jerry had turned up, so I left to change with Leon still going around with Jerry. Malika and I went to the lobby and out to the patio to find Leon. On our way, Jerry stopped us and said, "Are you ready to go?" Lee had something come up, so I told him that I would fill in for him. "Then I can see how much money you are going to spend." He laughed in a way that reminded me of nails being scraped across the blackboard, high pitched and shrill, which only added to my aggravation. I let him have it again. "Look, twit, who the hell are you to watch how little or how much I spend? What the hell are you doing? You act like you're screwing Leon and have the ring on your finger. You're going to stop messing with me and I can shop myself by myself." I was raising so much hell that somebody ran to find Leon. When he came in, he ran over, grabbed me, and said, "Nova, what the hell's wrong with you? Jerry said that he would take you shopping for me. You ain't got to be jumping on him for nothing. It don't make any sense. You wrong, Nova." My mouth dropped open. I didn't want to accept what I'd been told. I looked over at Jerry standing there with a mock look of hurt on his face. I tried to get Leon to understand why I was so mad, but he wouldn't hear any of it and started yelling. When that happened, you couldn't get a word in sideways. I don't really know how it happened, but Leon and I started fighting, and it progressed to him telling me that he was getting his brains beat out just so I could go buy gold chains and everything else that I had. Upon hearing that, I pulled all my jewelry off and said, "Here, jerk. You're always telling me that. Well, you can take this shit. I don't need it. I've never thrown up in your face what I've done for you or because of you. Things that you can't put a price tag on." I threw the jury at him. We stormed off, Leon one way and Malika and I going back to her room. That little insect, Jerry having done what he wanted, playing both of us, slid out the door, enjoying what had taken place. Whew, that little motherfucker. Back in Malika's room, and after she caught her breath, she said, "Nova, you know I feel for you like you were one of my own daughters now. And because I feel this way, I can talk to you. You could call it motherly, all right? Nova, Jerry Sawyer is a sick man. I couldn't believe all the things that you told me about him before until I saw for myself just what you were talking about. I have to bear witness to it. Sawyer is trying to interfere with you and your husband. He's out for no good. But you already know that because you told me. And what's so heartbreaking is that Leon can't see what's happening, can he?" I replied, "Malika, I told you. That's how it's always been with Leon. It's hard to believe, I know, but I go through things like this all the time. And for quite some time now, way before Jerry. But Jerry takes the cake. He's the motherlode of dirt and deceit. He's out to neutralize me, and he plays with Leon like he's silly putty. You're right. Blockhead can't see it, and that's what I'm talking about." She squeezed my hand and said, "You need to let that pass on by. Don't let it worry you. You need some peace. Let the crazy people stay that way. You can't scream and holler and let your blood pressure go up. When a nigga shows his ass, you have to let him do just that. Honey, I'm married to a man that, in his younger days, carried on somewhat like Leon, whooping and hollering, and at times, Milton still does. I stopped losing my peace and arguing back at him. And when that caused him to roam, I would let him. And he always came back. My voice can't equal a man's voice in a shouting match." I'd seen Malika as passive, but then I saw that she had a lot of wisdom. Her input produced a different kind of strength. Now remember what I always tell you. It's a fool that beats his chest who will not hear wisdom, and it's useless to use the voice of a lamb over the ravings of a lunatic. I repeated the verse along with her. I smiled, hugged her, and walked over to the window as the view helped me be calm again. Malika and I had begun to talk and laugh about other things when there was a knock at the door. Malika opened the door, and when I saw Leon step through, I turned back around, looking out the window as before. I could feel myself getting angry all over again, just from the sight of him. I fought to control it as he walked over to me and did the touch test. taking the back of his hand and gently stroking my face. I stood there instead of darting across the room. He touched my shoulders, guiding me around to face him, put his arms around me, and gave me a hug. When I returned it, he let out a sigh. I looked at Malika, who was still standing behind us, and she winked at me. Leon pushed me back at arm's length, reached into his pocket, and said, Nova, I'm sorry. I want you to have your jury. I won't say nothing else about it no more. I was wrong in the first place. Malika motioned for me to take them. After I looked down in his hand for about half a minute, I did. He then asked me if I still wanted to go shopping. I fought back my first instinct, which was to tell him to take the shopping trip and stick it back in his pocket, but instead I decided to say yes. Leon told me that he would be waiting downstairs for us, and then he left. Malika sat down on the bed and said, Nova, this is just as cute as it wants to be. You and Leon are something. If they all could just leave both of you alone. At that moment, there was another knock on the door, and I thought it was Leon coming back. When Malika opened the door, who but Jerry came tap dancing through the door with a big bunch of roses. I was very surprised, but I didn't show it. Malika wasn't doing so well. I had to let her know using gestures that her mouth was open. She caught on and turned to shut the door. Jerry looked at me with my arms folded across my breast, foot tapping, and ready for anything that this little cricket had to say. Or so I thought. He handed Malika and I 24 roses each and said, Nova, I want you and Malika to take these roses with my apologies. Nova, I'm sorry I tried to come between you and Leon. I know he is your husband and not mine, no matter how I may want it. What the fuck? What the hell that mean, y'all? He looked at me after he lifted his eyes from the floor only to see me as I had been before his little speech. Although I have to admit some of the unresponsiveness had left me, I wasn't expecting to hear any of what he said, and certainly not the last part. After he didn't get any acknowledgement from me, he turned and left. I looked at Malika and saw a mirror image on her face of what I was feeling. She said, Nova, you really have something to deal with. It's a lot on you, girl. I can't believe what I just heard. And what did he mean by the last statement? He said, Jerry has really got a problem. I picked up the phone to call my brother, and I told Malika when this is all over with, I should write a book to tell about this circus. But then again, maybe I won't because it's all too wild to believe. She laughed, and Norburn knocked on the door. I asked him to find Leon for me. When Leon came back to the room, I told him what had happened with Jerry, and he had no answers for me about Jerry's remarks. Leon gathered up all the roses, went to the balcony, and threw them out, and they landed in the courtyard below. Then he yelled, Jerry don't have to give you all shit. I'm going back downstairs to wait for you. Take your time. When he left, Malika and I looked at each other, bewildered as we were before. We could do nothing but laugh. As we started to leave, there was another knock. This time it was 2 bellmen, each carrying 24 roses laced with baby's breath flowers. After they left, I read the card aloud to Malika. To my wife, with all my love, Daddy. This brought another round of, now isn't that cute, from Malika. I wasn't amused. I just wished that I could get that kind of love, loyalty, and devotion from Leon when it really mattered. I pulled Malika, still chuckling, out the door to meet Leon. When we went downstairs, an eerie feeling came over me, and I looked at Malika and told her that something was up. It wasn't long after that statement before I found out what. Michael and Mama Spinks had arrived with Michael's girlfriend, Sandy. They were all sitting in the lounge when I walked in for Leon, and he was in a mood. Sandy smiled and spoke to me, and I returned in kind. Kay and Michael had the usual sneer on their faces. I have to say that I expected at least a whispered hello from them, since it had not been that long that I sent his mammy $33,000, and against her son's wishes. I knew, or at least I tried to remember, that they had that jinx of being sick and crazy. Sandy was different. Although she'd been around them 24/7, if she felt the way her man and his mother did about me, she never let it be known to me. She always had a smile and always spoke. She would occasionally look over her shoulder up at Michael, but that look she got from him never stopped her from being at least civil to me. Sandy was a pretty girl, and I suspect she was that way inside as well as out, and she did adore Michael. But again, all through their relationship, when he went to Kay and told her of his marriage plans, she vetoed them again, saying that it would be a mistake, that he couldn't leave her, or the ever ready. He just wasn't ready for anything like that. Just look at the mess his brother had on his hands. So, Michael never married her. In the interim, Sandy bore him a little girl who looked just like her daddy. Sandy was 7 or 8 months pregnant with their second child when she was killed in a terrible car crash on a Philadelphia expressway. She died without Michael ever saying I do. I was very upset to learn when and how she died, and I only hope and pray that she didn't suffer. I walked past them over to Leon, who was acting like they weren't there, when I noticed that he had a glass in front of him. I thought it was Coke and picked it up and started to drink before he could stop me because he was busy talking to Malikah. There was a pungent taste of rum. I looked at him with a wide look on my face. Leon, seeing this, whispered, "Don't clown on me here, please. One drink isn't going to hurt me, and right now I need it." I looked at him, not able to find words to say anything else, and I walked out to the lobby to wait for him. It was just as I feared. It was just as I feared. It didn't stop with that one drink, and Leon would be drunk daily. In the days that followed, I steered clear of Leon's family not because I was afraid of them, but because of what I may have done. One day, Malikah, someone so innocent and good, spoke to Kay, and she turned up her nose and told her to stay out of her face. Malikah held on to me to help me fight off the urge to confront her about what she'd done. I felt that she had no reason to mistreat Malikah and show her no respect solely because she was in my company. I said nothing, as I wanted to keep things as quiet and calm as I could because the fight, or should I say, fall, was only a few days away. I would run and steal moments with Leon with the help of Malikah and Norburn. They would keep Jerry or whoever busy so we could be together alone for no more than a laugh and talk. I would keep trying to instill in him that he shouldn't take the fight so lightly. But that was all in vain when he had 12 others telling him that it would be a piece of cake. In the days ahead, I would become the enemy again because I stayed on Leon's back trying to make him leave the booze and all else he could find alone. One day, Jerry had accepted a dinner invitation for us without a word to either of us. Jerry was very excited because the call came from Monte Carlo and was to be at the very restaurant that all the Grand people would gather to watch the Grand Prix run every year. I just couldn't believe he did it without asking us anything. I asked Malikah and Norburn if they wanted to go, and before they could answer, Jerry spoke and told us all that the invitation was only extended for him, Yvonne, Leon, and me. "Well, I tell you what, if they don't go, then we don't go either," I said. Jerry looked at Leon, and for once in a long time, Leon backed me up, agreeing with me. And then Jerry conceded. He had no other choice. On the ride to Monte Carlo, Jerry started running his mouth. He was so thrilled, and he felt so important that this organization, the Sun something or other, had sought him out just to have Leon and him attend this dinner. When Malikah and I heard the name of the organization or brotherhood, we looked at each other having instant recall at the same time. We'd heard that name before, and we knew that it had heavy ties with South Africa. Hell, in all probability, they were South Africa. I let Leon know what I felt was going on. It was better to be safe than sorry, even if it wasn't playing like that. I had to let Leon know what I felt, and I had to get him away from Jerry's know-nothing ass long enough to do so. I didn't need him telling Leon that he had nothing to be concerned about when I knew in my bones that wasn't the case. And Jerry would protest anything that I said since he thought he cornered the market on everything. When we pulled up in front of the restaurant, the first thing I noticed was all the beautiful boats all bunched up together and docked a stone's throw away. We walked up some stairs into a large, dimly lit room decorated in old world style with relics from the sea. Old fishing nets, boat oars, lanterns, anchors, etc., and a huge banquet table. And it seemed like the place was closed to the public that night just for us. When everyone started taking their seats, Jerry was all teeth, shaking hands, and talking to me with a very pronounced accent. South African. The rest of the people there spoke little to no English. From what I could tell, the owner of the restaurant was sitting at the table right across from us. The way everyone would bow and scrape around him brought images to mind of an old mafia don. His wife, who spoke better English, began to tell us how Prince Rainer was very excited about the upcoming boxing match. I smiled at her, but I paid little attention to what she was saying. I was trying to keep my eye on Leon and on all the men that had gathered around him. As soon as we made eye contact, I motioned for him to come and tried to keep a smile on my face, not wanting anyone to see that things were on the verge of becoming frantic. Malikah already knew, and she told Norburn what I felt could be going on and to be on the alert. When Leon came over to the table and sat down, still smiling, I started to muzzle the side of his face, which made everyone at the table smile at my open display of affection towards Leon. They all seemed to love that sort of thing over there and raised their glasses to give a toast to us and amore. While that was going on, I whispered in Leon's ear and said, "Jerry has led us into the lion's den." I pulled back with that eternal smile I had plastered on my face. I looked into his face and eyes to see if he caught on to what I was trying to tell him. Leon looked at me for a minute with a blank look on his face. Then his eyebrows started to raise. His eyes widened. And that let me know that he got it and knew what I was trying to tell him and to proceed with caution. Leon and I stayed on top of everything that was going on around us. We would only drink what was opened in front of us, and if someone's back was turned when something was being opened or served to us, we would pass on it, with Malikah and Norburn following suit. When they began to serve dinner and rolled out this enormous fish, I know it had to have weighed 50 pounds. I knew that I wasn't going to mess with it in the first place. It wasn't right, just as I wouldn't eat pork. That fish was the biggest I've ever seen, not from behind glass swimming around, and it was big enough for everyone to eat, but that wasn't how it went. I noticed that Leon and I were the only ones being served from it, and then it was set aside when there was plenty for all. I pushed my knee over to nudge Leon's leg, and we watched them bring out more fish, beef, and pasta to serve to everyone else, never going back to the fish that Leon and I had been given. Maybe that was some kind of custom that with them, but I wasn't willing to take any chances. We picked at our fish, leaving it all on the plate, and filled up on bread and pasta. I was more than happy when it was all over and time to go on our way back to San Remo. On the ride back, Leon exploded on Jerry and said, "Sawyer, man, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why would you accept anything from a bunch of Why would you accept anything from a bunch of South African sons of bitches? You know what's up with them and how they feel about me and your black ass too, as far as that goes. You don't know what the hell you're doing, motherfucker?" Jerry sat there with this stupid look on his face, not wanting to believe what he was being told, muttering something about us being paranoid, that they were Australian. He was still not willing to accept that he had fallen for any kind of a setup. It seemed like there was something new to worry about every day after that. Then the day I received flowers from Bob Arum and his wife, something that he had never done in all the time that we associated with him. They were orchids with a card that read, "To our success." That shot my adrenaline up. I didn't like it, and I took the flowers and the card to show Leon and tell him that something was rotten. Leon told me that I was worrying way too much between the gulps of champagne that he was drinking, and that I could be a little paranoid. I was so upset at what I was seeing and even more about what he told me. I felt useless because I knew that I couldn't change things, and I didn't know how to make Leon wake up and at least see things for what they were. It wasn't playtime, and those racist bastards meant to have their white hope by all means necessary. I threw the flowers at Leon's feet, breaking the glass dish that they were in, and stormed off. Leon pulled his feet up into the chair, yelling after me that I was going crazy. Norburn stopped me when I saw him in the lobby and said, "Nova, guess what Jerry's ass just asked me?" I told him to go on. Well, that nigga came up to me out of the blue and asked me what did I think of my sister and her friend. I looked at him to see if I'd heard him right, and I had. I tried to hold it together and take it in stride, but I couldn't. After all, Norburn was my brother, my blood, and we were not the Spinkses. Did he think he would hear something negative about Malikah or me? It was as though everything went blank as I watched Jerry walk by. I turned to follow him along with Malikah and Norburn. Leon had been watching all of what was going on from the patio and came in to fall in line behind Norburn. I caught up with Jerry, reached for him, turning him around by his collar, and pushed him down in the chair. I leaned over him with my finger pointing in his face while he looked up at me, adjusting his glasses. Leon stopped me before I could really get started. I told him why I was so mad. Leon stepped between Jerry and me and said, "Sawyer, man, I don't know what's ailing you, man. You've got a problem." Then Leon took my hand and pulled me away. I asked him if that was it. Was that all that was going to be said? Leon started shaking his head, laughing, and said, "Mama, don't be tripping on Jerry. He's a little pussy. You know that. Let's walk over to the beach. We've never been there. Get Malikah and Norburn." And that was that. I dropped it, and we all walked to the beach to be close to the sea. Leon knew that it had always calmed me down just to look at it. After crossing the street and going over some tracks, we made it to the sand, when all of a sudden Norburn and Leon stopped dead in their tracks, gawking. They both had a Jethro Bodine look on their faces. You would think because of the Mediterranean Sea and how big and beautiful it was. No. What had them so overwhelmed was the ocean of oil glistening on breasts and butts that lay before them on the beach. Yes, we'd stumbled upon a nude beach. We were told, but had forgotten all about it, and that nudity was second nature in Europe. It was no big deal. Everybody had to know what we were. After all, we were the only black faces out there, but we still tried not to act like tourists. We couldn't boat and run, so we continued our hike down the beach with Norburn and Leon giving each other a high five every few yards. We walked upon a couple making love on the beach in front of God and everybody. Malikah began to blush, mouth hung open. Leon and Norburn said, check them out. The couple didn't miss a stroke, and that didn't seem to affect Leon at all. And we pressed on farther down the beach where it was even more isolated. That's where we almost fell over a gay couple doing the same thing. We all looked, but Leon blew up. He was insulted, offended, and outraged, calling the couple a few choice names and kicking sand at them. The men jumped up saying something that I didn't understand, grabbing their swimming trunks, and ran off down the beach. I thought Leon protested too much. Leon wanted to hear none of that, and he turned into a herdsman and guided us all back to the hotel. The day had at last arrived, and we were loading up in the courtyard behind the hotel when Kay asked Leon to ride in the car that she and Michael were in, and that she had some talk and some prayers for him. I wanted Leon to ride with me, but I wasn't going to kick up any dust about it, not on that day. We left Italy San Remo on our way to France's Monte Carlo for the flight. When we arrived in Monte Carlo, I gazed out the window at the shops, the colored fountains, and the people who were very elegant. I could see the word money flash on and off over their heads like a neon sign. We went to yet another hotel that was a lot more modern to wait until flight time. I was really geared up and very nervous, more so than any other of Leon's fights, if that was possible. I didn't know why, but the time went very slowly, and when that time came, I wished that it could start all over again. The ring was set up outside, and it was a warm and soothing night. Leon had left before us. I found that out when they returned to take us over. I was upset that I hadn't got to say anything to Leon before he left. I'd always got to tell him, don't fall down, but not this time, and it bothered me. When Malikah, Norburn, and I found our seats, the preliminaries had already started, and I wanted them to hurry and be over so Leon's fight would be over. I still couldn't shake the feeling that I had in the hotel, and I found myself trying to tune out my surroundings. But the crowd, noise, music, and the people that started to stand brought me back to the present, making me aware of where I was and what was about to take place. When Leon came in, I started to pray. He looked at Malikah and shouted, "Where's Nova? Tell her to stand up." Malikah glanced down at me, and I stood. Leon looked at me and shook his head as if he was disgusted. I wondered what I'd done wrong. Then it crossed my mind that Leon was feeling king-like and wanted everyone to be on their feet when he entered someplace, and most of all, his wife. He walked past me without another look my way and climbed into the ring. When Kotze entered the ring, the South Africans went crazy, jumping up with banners and flags cheering him on. My eyes wandered to Kotze's corner, and I recognized two of the men that were in the restaurant in his corner, attending to him. After the hoopla was over and the rules recited, the bell sounded for the fight to begin. Everything was wrong from the very beginning. Hank Groom sent Leon out of his corner like a wild man, telling him to hurry up and get it over with so they could go home, and adding his favorite saying, "It's a piece of cake," or "You got it in the bag." I knew then why I felt sick to my stomach, on top of being a basket case. Everything slowed down for me then. I watched every movement, all in slow motion. I remember Leon and Kotze being in a clinch, and Kotze saying something in Leon's ear to cause him to throw back his head in slack-jawed laughter. Just at that moment, Kotze raised his fist and swung. Leon's head snapped to the side as if watching Kotze's fist go back. Leon's mouthpiece shot out his mouth, and his mouth filled with blood. Oh, Lord have mercy. He getting his ass served. I watched Leon for what seemed like forever as he slowly hit the canvas and bounced. His arms and legs looked like rag dolls. I felt as though I had just lost him and that he was dead, shot and killed right before my face. Only then did things come back to speed. I recall screaming his name and covering my eyes, and just as fast I was on my feet, running as if I had no control. I found myself fighting through hordes of people. I turned to see Leon try to get up, stumble, and get knocked down 2 more times. Oh, shit! Tears began streaming down my face. I ran out of the high-heeled mules that were on my feet, my brother running behind me, trying to catch me. I'd seen Leon lose a fight before, bleed from cuts and piss blood, but I'd never seen him get knocked out. I couldn't put anything in order and be rational. To me, he was dead or dying, and I just had to get to him before it was too late. To my amazement, there was something in me that still loved and cared about him, and I had to let him know that. On my way up the steps to the ring, a policeman stopped me talking fast in a language that I didn't understand, holding me, not letting me move one way or the other. I tried to tell him that I was Leon's wife between sobbing. He either knew that and didn't care, or most likely couldn't understand my language as well. Finally, in desperation, I stepped back and did something that was of universal understanding, a right cross. Not as hard as I could, but enough to let him know that I was serious and I was ready to give him some more. By then, Norburn had caught up with me and had been trying to calm me down while the cop was holding me. I hit the cop again, but this time harder. When Norburn saw me deliver my message, his eyes bugged out. He threw his hands up to his head and began to holler, "Midnight Express! Girl, you're going to get all our asses locked up in a foreign prison and we'll never get home." Norburn tightened his grip, but when I pulled one of my arms free to swing again, he threw up both hands to say, "I quit." The cop, seeing that he had no longer had any help, let go of me to guard his now bleeding nose, and that's all I wanted in the first place. I'd never seen Leon so low behind a fight, not even when he lost the championship. Tears were in his eyes, and he was pleading and begging the referee to let the fight continue, but this was useless. The fight had been called. When I climbed into the ring, both of us were in tears. He told me that he was all right and hugged me. Mike was up in the ring by then, and he took Leon's arm, hugged him, and said, "Leon, man, you just wasn't ready." When Leon heard that, he pulled back from him and said, "Well, ain't you a bitch, Mike? Don't tell me that shit, man. I was in camp almost 5 goddamn months. Don't you dare tell me no shit like that." He jerked away from Mike as his cornermen, Dale and Mitch, tried to make him put on his robe. Leon bolted from them, jumped down out of the ring, waiting for no one, sprinting for the portable houses that were acting as dressing rooms. They followed him as I did, after I assured Malikah that I was all right. When I walked into the portable house, Leon was asking, what did Kotzi get him with? And he sat there listening to them with his hook in his mouth. I noticed that people were gathered outside, peering in at Leon through the bare windows of the trailer. When Dale and Mitch noticed that I had come in, they moved aside and Leon looked up at me and raised his arms. I went to him and he whispered in my ear, "I'm sorry, Mama. I let you down." I pulled away from him to see his face and told him that he had nothing to be sorry for. Leon had received a crowning blow to his pride and it deflated his ego. He felt lower than an ant's knee. The chaos had caught up with him big time, although he still didn't see that as the reason for any kind of payback for all the dirt that he had done in the past. I wasn't going to say, "I told you so." Mama and Brother Spinks came in, and Kay started in on him as soon as she cleared the door, yelling at the top of her lungs, "All of this is your fault. You let your guard down. That's why he got you." Leon told her to stop hollering at him and said, "Mom, I just lost, that's all." Kay was looking at him, but she darted her eyes at me and said, holding the Bible up in the air, "No, what you need to do now is come home with me and let me put some of this into you." Looking at me, but still talking to Leon, she added, "And you don't have to buy me." Then she swished past everyone over to a chair that Mike had pulled out for her and sat down and slipped back into her Mother Teresa thing. I knew what I wanted to do at that point, and I really had to control myself. I also knew she had a lot of crust on her ass to say something like that at me. Not after the way she lusted after money and the way she treated Leon all his life. Worse after we were married. Back then, she didn't have a son called Leon. Back then, he was going to hell because of me. I was tired of Kay's big mouth. And I meant that, and I mean that literally. I knew at that time that Leon didn't need or want his mother and wife squaring off on each other, so I let some more of her nerve-grinding innuendos go by me. Again. A multitude of people came in to give Leon words of encouragement. Ken Norton was one of them. He told Leon not to take it so hard and that it happens to the best of them. He was going to say something else when Kay jumped to her feet, startling him when she shouted, "He ain't thrown away. He's not washed up." Norton looked at her and said, "Yes, I know, Mrs. Spinks." He told Leon that he would talk to him later and left. Leon glanced over at Kay, shaking his head. Norburn had come in looking wild. His suit, shirt, and tie were all in disarray. He told me that all kinds of fights had broken out in the whole area around the trailers. He said, "Nova, it's them fucking honkies from South Africa. They started shouting nigger, and before you knew it, one of Leon's sparring partners cracked one upside the head, and the shit was on. There's about 20 fights going on. The police are trying to stop it, but they can't do shit. There's too many of them. It was getting tight, and we all decided that it was time to get out of there and back to San Remo. Everyone loaded up in the car. Norburn took Malikah's arm and let her out, covering her head with his coat to protect her from the debris being hurled through the air. Leon and I came out last with some bodyguards. Leon made sure Kay and Mike got away, deciding that they would ride with me on the trip back. He just couldn't take any more of her at that time. When we came out, there were about 500 people around the cars, mostly South Africans. More police had to be called to try to get them all back. When they saw Leon's face, they started jeering at him, calling smacking sounds with their mouths, hollering, "Bring him to Johannesburg, boys. He's the trophy. Give the kaffer to us." Now, y'all know over there in South Africa, kaffer is the equivalent of them calling us nigga over here. Okay? Okay. So we were in the cars waiting for the police to make the South Africans move. Norburn was hyped up and yelled, "Fuck it, run over all the sons of bitches," causing everyone in the car to laugh at his remarks, including Leon. I was sitting in the front seat between Leon and the driver. I, unlike Norburn, didn't see what the hell was funny. I really could relate then how black folk may have felt unarmed and helpless in the early South when they were attacked and assaulted by those low-down, vicious, cowardly fools who wore their laundry to hide behind. The mob that surrounded us started beating on the hood and roof of the car, and then started rocking the car from side to side. Any longer and we would have been capsized, and then God only knows what would have happened. The driver looked frozen, afraid to move or even blink. I had to do something, so I moved my foot over on top of his, dug my foot in, and punched down as hard as I could, causing the car to leap forward, making the driver hold on for dear life. We hit 4 of the Kaffir callers, knocking some of them on the hood of the car and rolling off to the ground. The car bucked when it ran over 2 or more of them. After that, the rest of them jumped out the way trying to save their own asses. That's when they finally got it and saw that we weren't playing with them. We fishtailed out of the gravel-covered parking lot, and I looked back and saw people attending to the jerks that were stretched out on the ground in the parking lot. We didn't stop, and I didn't give a second thought to how hurt they may have been as we made our way back to Italy and San Remo. In the days that followed, all Leon would do was lie around with his hook in his mouth with a bottle of booze in his hand, staring off into space. Everyone except Malikah and I acted like someone close to them had died. They walked around on eggshells whenever Leon was around, and Jerry would sit with Leon and openly weep. And all of it made me sick. Leon would come around more and more just to be near me, and it was like he found comfort to just share my space. He never had much to say. The conversations he did have were mostly with himself. He would sit on the balcony of our room, drinking alone, saying nothing, and really wanting no one to say anything to him. I tried to break through to him, but his mind was going full speed through hell, with different changes every day. Leon had gotten knocked out for the first time in his life. He was devastated and, at times, wished that he was dead so he wouldn't feel the way he did anymore. After staying up night after night to watch over him, to listen to every sound that he made, I was more than happy when the day came and we left San Remo, going home back to the States. During the time that followed the Code Z fight, shortly after we returned home, Leon grew very low and despondent. One day, I walked into my bathroom never expecting that Leon would be sitting there on the commode scratching his head, but what really took me aback was the fact that he was doing it with a loaded and cocked .357 Magnum with his finger on the trigger. It was clear to me what was going through his mind. My heart jumped in my throat. I asked him softly and as calmly as I could, what was he doing? I didn't want to startle him when he had his finger on the trigger of a loaded gun. Leon just stared at me, got up, pulling up his pants, and brushed past me in silence. I'd been trying to cut back smoking, but after what I saw, that idea was blown to hell. I lit one as fast as I could with a shaking hand, as my nerves were shot. Red called to speak to Leon, who wasn't there. I told Red about how Leon had been acting and about the gun, and of course, he knew Leon would do this and would be going through all these changes. Red knew Leon needed him. He knew how to slow and calm Leon down, and he said to tell Leon he was on his way. He could fix everything. Then he said, "Papa San will be there," and hung up the phone before I had a chance to say anything. I had no idea at that time why Red thought he could fix everything or do so much. I knew he and Leon had a history, but Red and I were never as close as he and Leon, even after Hilton Head. On the surface, I could see no great control that Red had over him. Leon always did what he wanted whenever he felt like it and with whomever he pleased. Leon wasn't a day at the beach before, but after the knockout, common sense, right and wrong, decency, conscience, and the feeling of obligation all be damned. Because these were replaced with irreverence, slanderous acts, barbarism, depravity, and without fail, Leon always threw in a little invented contrition. Red had been around for over a month. The only thing that was changing was Charlie. He started taking him places to the park to play ball. Every promise that Red made to him, he kept. All and everything that Leon should have done. The father and son things that I just couldn't replace. To have your mom out there with you wasn't the same for Charlie. It was a man thing. I was glad Red had taken the time to do things with my son, but there were so many things going on that my head couldn't have been in the right place either. Regardless of Red's presence, Leon still stayed in the streets, the bars, and the discos. I wouldn't hear from him, and the only assurance I had that he was still breathing was the TV or the newspaper reporter, or the newspaper reporting what he had run into his car with. Most of the reports came from Marvin's hometown, either Lorraine or O'Leary, Ohio. It had become Leon's party town. I had parties myself at home to keep my spirits up. All it would take was a phone call, and I was guaranteed a house full of people that I controlled in good times. Leon would hardly ever attend or have anything to do with my guest list or the planning of my parties. The one time he did, it was obvious there were drug dealers and hustlers, and I counted at least 6 hitmen and homosexuals of different levels. From one toe out of the closet to full drag, and the strumpets that had no respect for themselves, much less me. Aisha would often pull them aside to tell them they should remember that Leon was in his wife's house and not in the streets, and that they should straighten up or get out. Then, as if the things that were already going on weren't enough, a tramp from out of the past showed up by phone via a male friend. When the phone rang, I picked it up the same time Leon did and was about to hang up when I heard the caller tell Leon that he had someone with him that really wanted to talk to him. When I heard the voice, I recognized it immediately. I listened to her quivering voice as she said, "Leon, why haven't you called me?" It was Tina from Philly. She went on to tearfully say that she had to go into the hospital to have an operation, and the surgery that she had to have done was his fault, and she wanted money to help pay her bill. She was flat out sobbing by then. Leon responded, "Oh no, what's wrong? What happened?" Leon was trying to calm her and told her that he would send her any money she needed. He never asked her how it was his fault for this medical condition. All I could think was that was some female problems, and the root of it all was sexual. I couldn't take it any longer. I interrupted her pitiful little scam when I said, "Bitch, you should have kept your legs closed and you can forget about getting one white quarter." There was instant silence. No talking, no sobbing, just a click, and then a dial tone. I hung the phone up to go downstairs to face Leon. I returned to the party to find Leon, and I found a line created outside of one of the powder rooms. I forgot all about Tina. I couldn't understand the line when there were other bathrooms in the house. I got in the line. Then, when my turn came and I walked through the door, I got the answer. There were 2 dinner plates on the floor, and what the fuck? And both held cocaine and powder and rock form, and a freebase pipe on the vanity. Have mercy. Just as I was trying to decide what to do with all of that damn cocaine, I received another shock when I saw Butch Lewis come through the door, grinning like it was old home week. I really knew then that I had lost control of my party and my house, because Butch wouldn't have been welcomed at either. That was enough. I retreated to my room, vowing never to have another party while Leon was in town to interfere with it. But from time to time, he would still crash them, walking in with his chest stuck out, parading around like a peacock. Whenever he did come back to Detroit, he hardly ever spent the night or was ever coherent, and there was always liquor on his breath and powder around his nose. Jerry was spasmodic, and he didn't know what to do. He wanted Leon under control, and he saw that he wasn't. He blamed everyone else for his actions. Jerry told me that Marvin was at fault, and Jerry started plotting on him and anyone else that he didn't want in Leon's company. I knew that I was on the list as well. Leon and Marvin were still pretty close. I didn't like it, especially after the anonymous caller who said that Leon was, or wanted to be, fucking Marvin, and Marvin didn't like it. I kept pushing that aside, trying to keep in mind that whatever Leon did wasn't Marvin's fault, and if Marvin was into anything perverted, I couldn't tell. But the one thing that I couldn't forget was that Leon was a grown man. He wasn't a child, and he knew the difference between right and wrong. Jerry didn't want to hear it and said, "Look, Nova, I know Lee wouldn't do half the stuff he does if it wasn't for that fucking Marvin. Hold on, y'all. I'm supposed to get up and close the balcony door. I don't want a lot of background noise disturbing us. One moment. Okay. Hopefully this is better. I apologize for the background noise. I didn't even think about the balcony door until just now. Hold on. Look, Nova, I know Lee wouldn't do half the stuff he does if it wasn't for that fucking Marvin. All that cocaine, alcohol, wrecking cars, and he is going through a hell of a lot of money. Did you know that he invested $100,000 in a rock group that had disappeared? I have to start someplace, so I have to be the hatchet man. It's for Leon's own good, just for his sake. I'm going to start with Marvin. I'm going to get him in a case. I've had that nigga investigated, and I know that he is having problems with child support. The law wants him for that. The most important thing is he carries Leon's drugs. I'm going to see to it that he gets picked up. If he's arrested with that shit on him, he will be in jail and away from Leon and out of my hair. Then, bingo, Leon is under control. Jerry busted out in wild laughter, pulling the door shut behind him. Less than a week later, sure enough, I wasn't surprised to find out that Marvin had been stopped by the police and arrested. Jerry talked Leon into coming back to Detroit after he saw that he wouldn't be getting Marvin out right away. After they returned to Michigan, Jerry asked Leon some kind of way to go with him to California, as Jerry said, for Lee to dry out and maybe get some psychological help. When Leon left, I thought Red would go with him since he had come from California, but Leon asked him to stay in Detroit to look after the house and me. The first night that Leon was gone, Red tried to seduce me again. I woke up to him crawling in my bed. I told him again that I didn't want it and not to even go there. I said that I would indeed tell someone, even if it couldn't be Leon. That seemed to do it, and after a slight attitude, he left my room and never tried again. I would still have to slap his hands away because he would still try to touch my body from time to time. He was very sneaky, and this would keep me on edge. I would always try to keep someone over as long as I could. Amina would come over often, and as long as someone was there, Red would behave. He would try to talk her ear off, telling her about all of his conquests, his military career, and how much he loved Leon. He went on talking about his drinking and whatever else he wanted to vent about. Amina became an armchair psychiatrist, listening and talking to him for hours, and that suited me just fine. I would go shopping or over to Malikah's to see and talk to her and not have to deal with Red. Leon had been gone a week or so, and I received a call from a man who identified himself as the psychologist working with Leon. He told me that beside the fight bothering him and getting a knockout, Leon also had influences in his life. These were his mother and wife, both pulling and both very dominant. I listened and thanked him and hung up the phone. I didn't feel like I could crack a whip, and Leon would do what I said without question. I didn't take too much stock in what the doctor told me. If that was indeed the case, Leon would have had his ass home where he should have been, being a good husband to me instead of chasing pantyhose, no matter who was in them, and sideswiping cars. Not more than 3 days after I talked to the doctor, Jerry called me on the verge of panic. Leon had escaped. Jerry said that he was going to find him and come back to Detroit. When they did return almost 2 weeks later, Leon was acting different than before he left. God help me, he was worse. I also noticed the change in Charlie. Red would crack jokes on Leon and play, and Charlie would laugh along with the rest of us and would ask Red to tell another one. In the past, he would have been insulted. He would have been insulted if anyone dared to in front of him, and he didn't want anyone to make fun of his dad. At times, I've had to stop him from trying to take a swing at an adult that made that mistake in his presence. But that all changed. Now, he was laughing too. He wasn't upset about it anymore. I noticed it, and then I thought about what my mother had told me. She said it wasn't necessary to say anything about a bad parent to a child, that they would see for themselves without anyone having to say a word. The one doing all the talking would look like the villain. So, I blew it off, thinking that Charlie was just getting tired of Leon's mistreatment of him, and that was his way of showing him. With Leon doing so many drugs, he was becoming paranoid at times. He began seeing things that weren't there, hearing what wasn't said, and Leon even slapped Charlie across his face, leaving his handprint and blood in Charlie's mouth because he heard him call him a bastard. Charlie never said a word, but he went after him again. I pulled Charlie away from him and told him to go hide in my car and lock himself in. Leon and I began fighting. I was determined to keep him away from Charlie. I told him that what he was doing was bullshit, and he was very wrong if he thought that he was going to hit him again. All at once, Leon stopped in mid-struggle and repeated what he believed he heard, me asking for bullets. He broke away from Gary, my security guard, who had intervened by then and was trying to stop him. Leon made a mad dash for the stairs, yelling, "Nah, bitch! You want to kill me? Well, I'm going to get you first." He went after his gun, found it, and came back, loading it in front of me. Gary, Red, and I all leapt on him, pulling him down to the floor. I sat on him while they wrenched the gun out of his hand. I went and bought a gun after that. I didn't want to use it, but I couldn't be sure that there would always be someone there if Leon went through this again. Sure enough, not 2 days later, Red had gone to the store. Gary had not come on duty yet, and Leon was at it again. This time, it was because I was treating him like less than a man because I didn't wait for him to take out the garbage. We fought from the front of the house to the back, with Leon getting in 5 or 6 good shots, knocking me down to the floor, straddling me, pulling me up by the collar of my blouse to hit me again. Then, all of a sudden, Leon's fist froze in midair. I followed his gaze to see Charlie standing there, tears running down his face. He said, "Don't you hit my mama no more, Dad." Charlie was holding a shotgun and had it leveled down on Leon's head. Leon was not so deep in his drug-induced haze to realize that Charlie was as serious as he could be. By that time, Red had come back from the store and could see what was going on. He crept behind Charlie, pushing the barrel in the air and grabbing him at the same time. Just at that moment, the gun discharged. Leon dived over the top of me, and I covered my head to shield myself from the wood and glass chips that were raining down. The bullet had struck the door, and we were all in shock. I pushed Leon off me. I wasn't concerned about him. I went over to Charlie, hugged him, and went upstairs to my bedroom, locking the door behind us. An hour later, Red knocked on the door to tell me that Leon had left without a word, and he didn't know where he went. After a few weeks had passed, I heard that Marvin was out of jail, and he and Leon picked up where they left off, all to Jerry's dismay. One evening, Leon came home alone. It seemed that Marvin had someplace that he had to go. Then, for some reason, Leon wanted me to go with him out of town. Shit. He said there was something that he wanted to check out and we would just be gone overnight. I was very leery about this and not sure what I should do. Was he trying to get me someplace to hurt me without interruption? His obnoxious behavior and brutality worried me. Leon must have picked up on what I was thinking and feeling because he said, "Nova, we will just be gone overnight. It's about some property somebody told me about it in Vermont. I want to check it out. You could bring Norburn with you if you are worried about me. I promise I'm not going to hurt you. I don't want you with me for that. I love you. I know sometimes you can't tell, but I do, and it really hurts me when you feel this way about me. Red will keep an eye on Charlie. We'll be back in the morning." Red said that since it was just overnight that we'd be gone, and since Charlie was already asleep, it was okay. Under those conditions, I also agreed, and we left on a midnight flight out of Metro Airport. We had a long layover in Washington, D.C. After a while, we began to walk around to keep from being bored to death. 2 hours had passed before they announced that our flight would be ready for boarding soon. Norburn and I were together, but Leon went to the restaurant 20 minutes earlier and had not returned. When our flight was called with no Leon in sight, I sent my brother in after him. I stood outside the door to wait for them, noticing how few people there were in the airport. The ones that were hanging around didn't look at all like travelers. When Norburn came out of the restroom, he had only been in there for a matter of seconds. He looked like he had seen a ghost. I asked him, "What's the matter? Where's Leon? Is he in there?" Norburn looked at me as if trying to search for words, and he was frightening me, especially after Leon's recent history. I thought maybe he had hurt himself or was already dead from some kind of overdose. Norburn's silence was really getting me. I couldn't wait for him to answer me. I reached for the door to go in myself when Norburn stopped me and said, "Nova, he's all right, for real. You know, it has been hard for me to have any kind of respect for Leon, how he treats you, and other things that he does. But now, it's easy for me to say, he ain't shit. He's a rotten, sick son of a bitch. Yeah, he's in there in one of the stalls, but he ain't by himself. Somebody's in the stall with him, and whoever it is, they have on black boots, and he was on his knees. Come on, sis. You don't need to be around this, and I need some air." I looked at him speechless. I couldn't believe what he was trying to say to me. I was not going to believe it. I pulled away from him to go into the bathroom myself. Just then, the door opened, and the first thing I saw was the black boots. My eyes went from the floor up. Leather pants and vest with studs on it, as well as black wristbands and a dog collar that he had on. He had white spiked hair, a Billy Idol look-alike. My eyes stayed on him as he walked by us. I looked at Norburn and he nodded, yes. My heart was beating so hard in my chest that I thought it would explode. I slumped against the wall for support and began looking down into my purse, trying to find my credit card and ID. It was hard to do because the tears and mascara were stinging my eyes. When I found them, I told Norburn to get us tickets back to Detroit. Quickly, I was watching Norburn walked to the ticket counter, trying to focus on him, my head reeling from what had happened. I knew very well that Leon was capable of a lot, but this, such a monster act just a few yards from a waiting wife, was too much for me to deal with, and I was fighting nausea. Leon came out of the restroom, looked in my face, and calmly said, "Well, I guess this means that you don't want to go with me to Vermont." What can I say? He's a fan. Leon was living up to his battle cry, freaky deaky. Mm-mm-mm. I was speechless. On the outside, I must have appeared calm, but on the inside, deep down, I was screaming and crying and wanting to scratch his eyes out. I walked away from him, not looking back and trying to stay composed. As I was walking to meet my brother, I tried to think of something to say to him. I wanted to display my "it's no big deal" look. My horse attitude wouldn't even kick in. I felt tears run down my cheeks, and I buried my face in my hands, trying to shut out everything. Norburn looked at me and said, "That shit was only the tip of the iceberg, huh? I always knew you were strong, but how do you function? How do you still walk around smiling and remain in the nigga's corner, Nova?" Grace was the only answer that I had for him. Norburn put his arm around my shoulder and led me up the ramp to the waiting plane. We flew back to Detroit. When we walked when we walked into the house, everyone was still sleeping. I walked upstairs with what felt like the weight of the world on my shoulders. When I looked in on Charlie, he looked so peaceful without a worry in the world. I walked out of his room, shutting the door, not even realizing then the hell my young son had been through. The next evening, I went over to Malikah's house, as I would do when I had something heavy on my mind, and I needed some way to relieve the pressure. Aisha was there, which was all the better. I just had to talk to someone. I felt as if I would burst if I didn't. I already had all my fingers and toes stuck in my emotional dam. I needed to spill off quickly before I needed to spill off quickly before it was too late. Danger was already flashing on and off over my head, and I feared the jinx would be all over me, forcing me to call a press conference and spill my guts, telling the latest Leon lunacy. Aisha was the first to notice that something was the Aisha was the first to notice that something very deep was on my mind, and Malika agreed. We all huddled on the sofa with me in the middle. I told them everything that had happened on our trip halfway to Vermont. I felt Malika shudder, and we all agreed that it was an abomination. After a few more minutes, Aisha said, "Nova, things are starting to tie in, especially after I heard this about Leon. Red said something to Amina at my house one time that was very upsetting. He said that Charlie was trying to touch him improperly. He said that Leon knew about it, and since he was Charlie's father, there was no need to tell you. You never mentioned anything about it. Leon didn't say anything to you about it, did he? Then why didn't he? Have you talked to Charlie about anything? If you haven't," I didn't give her a chance to say anything else. As it was, I felt like she had slapped me across my face, and I was horrified. I jumped up and ran out of Malika's house. Aisha was yelling from behind me that she would drive and I shouldn't. I didn't wait and screeched away from the curb on my way home. When I pulled in the driveway, Jerry's car was there. I leaned my head against the steering wheel, trying to compose myself. When I walked in, Red and Jerry were in the family room with Charlie, who was watching TV. I took his hand to lead him upstairs. Jerry started saying that he had to talk to me. I told Jerry that he had to wait until I come back down because I had something that I had to take care of first. I never looked at or said a word to Red. Charlie and I sat on the bed. He began looking at me, full of questions, and I searched for the words I wanted to say to my son. He could sense something was wrong, he just didn't know what. I took his hand, and for some reason, I really noticed how small it was laying inside of mine. And I began telling him that I loved him no matter what, that there was nothing that he could do or say that would ever make me change my mind or heart. He could tell me anything, and if there was something wrong, I would try to fix it, that we could work out anything and not to be afraid of anything or anyone. I wouldn't let anybody hurt him. I asked him if he believed me, and he nodded his head, yes. I told him that I wanted him to ask, or no, I told him that I wanted to ask him a question, and I wanted him to tell me the truth, no matter what. Charlie started nodding his head again. I had to ask him about Leon. It was screaming in my head again. I felt so cold, and I still had my coat on. My mouth was dry. I braced myself to ask the question and to hear the answer. Honey, has Dad has Dad ever touched you in any way or wanted you to touch him in any way that wasn't right, that made you easy? You know, like we talked about with strangers? See, sometimes it's not just the people that we don't know that can hurt us or do things that aren't right. I waited for what seemed like forever until Charlie looked up at me, his eyes beaming with tears, and matter of factly and honestly said, "Not Dad. Mom, he don't really need. He don't want me to love him. But Red loves me. And Dad. And you too." Oh my God. "Red loves me. And Dad. And you too, Mom." Red said people kiss each other down there to show love each other. So he knows I love him. So he will keep playing ball and stuff me. He said that's what you and Dad wanted. He said that Dad me. Then that's why I couldn't bear to hear anymore. I reached for my child, and he jumped off the bed and into the walk-in closet that was in my room. I don't know if I was gonna hit him or what. He was afraid, and he thought I was mad at him because Red told him it would happen if I ever found out. I sat on the floor outside my closet and I began to talk to him again through the door. I held back from crying aloud. However, I had no control over the tears streaming down my face. I told Charlie again that I would not let him because of this, and that no matter what, it's not his fault. And Red had lied to him. Everything he ever said to him had all been lies. Charlie opened the door and let me in. I grabbed him and hugged very tightly. We stayed there for a long time in the closet, clinging to each other. I wanted Charlie to go to his room so I could go and deal with Red. He wasn't ready to leave the safety of the closet. I wasn't going to force him out, and I wondered if he used my closet as a safe haven before. I gave him crayons and coloring book, told him no matter what, to stay there till I came to get him. Shaking and could hardly catch him, and everything blanked for a moment. I was going to my dresser, up clothes and slamming them down on the floor, crazy woman, until I found what I was looking for, a gun. I quickly found one bullet, and it just had to. I put it in the gun and out of my room and down the steps. Yeah, it's time for some business. I don't believe one race are more volatile than the other. It takes the right thing to set you up. It's in all of us. Killer instinct. It doesn't matter if killer at heart. It happens when it is being taken too far. When you push a person's wrong at the moment, mine is not just pushed. Charlie was my button, and the only thing that I was to see that son of a bitch did. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I had Red and Jerry had moved from across the hall to the library. I walked through the doorway. I told Jerry to come and to do it now. I was surprised and startled, but he did what I running all the way over to the other side hallway quickly. I found Red raising the gun and pointing it at it. I pulled the trigger once and then over again, expecting to hear the explosion of leaving the chamber, but it didn't. Just I realized what I'd done. I put my foot in the wrong side of the cylinder, the left. It had to revolve, come forward with fire. If I had put on the right side, one pull of the trigger shot that bastard. By then, Red knew what was happening, and he stopped running the room like a caged animal, and he ran to the desk, charging straight for me, trying to me down. I stepped back to beat him in the head with the pistol. Ballistic. I wanted Maggot dead. Blood began pouring out of the wounds that I'd up on his head, splashing on face, the walls, and mingling in the fine mint coats. I kept all the hate, guilt, and pain that I had within me. Jerry had been standing there like he had just Twilight Zone, acting like a little bitch, whining and asking what was wrong, and the fucking stop. The only thing that made me stop hitting him after beating him to the floor was Charlie. I heard him crying as he came down the steps, already seen too much, and he'd been through, and been enough. I stepped over and went to my baby and held him as tightly, and both of us got on the living room sofa. Jerry stepped over Red, who was lying motionless on the floor, and said, "What the hell is going on? Have you lost your mind? What do I want to say? What do I say to him?" I told Jerry to shut up and pick that piece of shit up and get him out of my house. He's been hurt, maybe. He has stolen his childhood. You understand? Jerry's eyes widened as the meaning of what I said became clear. That was the first time I saw Jerry show any grit in all the time that I knew him. He ran over to Red, snatched him off the floor, and said, "You dog son of a bitch, you gotta go. You're leaving here now. I'm not gonna be responsible if you don't." On the way out, Jerry yelled back they would call me back to talk to me and not to do anything. No peace until he did. After they left, Charlie became hysterical, called me and then hugged me. He was afraid for me. He looked at me and said, "Mama, we gotta go. We have to run. You killed Red. He gotta die. The police are gonna get you, and then I'll have nobody." It took me 40 minutes to calm him down. I assured him that it wasn't dead and that I wasn't going anywhere. After seeing Charlie's reaction, just for a split second, I was glad that I hadn't pumped it into Red's head. I had been hanging. I always thought it would be brother who tried to destroy me, another person who was close to Leon, but I was wrong. The phone rang and it was Razul. He had stopped Malika's and was told our conversation, and he called to make sure everything was all right. I broke down again after hearing his voice, concern for me. All I could say to him was that it was true. My poor baby, it's true. It was Red. He begged me to stop crying and to be strong for Charlie. I knew he still cared about me, although we no longer were having an affair. It was wrong for both of us. I told him that he didn't have to worry about that because I didn't have a choice in the matter. I went back to Charlie, who was still devastated, crying and biting his nails. I picked him up, carried him upstairs, and crawled in my bed with him, and I rocked him until he fell asleep. I replaced my arm with a pillow so I could sit up in the bed. I was numb, and I felt so very guilty. How come I didn't see? This was the only time since the Pontchartrain incident that I felt like I wanted to die. I knew there was supposed to be a reason for everything, and I was searching for one. Was it because was it because I had turned Red away? If that was the case, I would have opened my legs to him 24/7. If that would have kept him away from my child. Or was he just trying to punish me? Was that why he went after my baby? I didn't understand. How could he? God help me, I still wanted him dead. I had no idea how deep Red's perversions ran. I never had any doubts, and I just thought he was into adults only. I felt if anybody knew about Red, I believe in my soul that Leon did. Whatever Red said at Aisha's house was said with the purpose of covering his own ass and to remove suspicion from himself. The ringing of the phone popped the image out of my head, that of Red in his coffin after being skinned alive. It was Jerry, more hyper than usual. He started to rattle on. Nova, I took that bastard to a hotel. I wasn't about to take him to my house around my son. I found Leon. He don't want you to call the cops about this. He said that he wants to take care of this. He told me to ask you that and not tell you, Nova. You know, we really don't need that. Not now. Not when. I didn't let him say anything else. I was feeling nauseous. I told him that it was about nobody but Charlie and what was best for him. I decided not to call the police because of Charlie. He has had enough intrusion. To hell with you, Jerry. In fact, fuck you and Leon both if something isn't done in my son's defense. I slammed the phone down, having the resolve that if they did try to sweep this under the rug, I would call the police and damn what Leon said. Early the next day, Leon and Marvin came in. We stood there and looked at each other. Leon came to me and hugged me. I couldn't return the feeling. All I wanted to know was what was he going to do about Red? If he was going to do anything at all. I was still full of rage, and I didn't care what happened. I wanted something done to Red. What I'd done was nowhere near enough. I was vengeful, so much so that I asked Leon flat out, how come I didn't know Papa San was into small male defenseless children. Leon looked at me like he didn't really hear what I just told him, so I repeated my statement. That's right. You heard me. He fucked me. He's molested my child, and I don't know what the hell you've done. I know he sure is in your face a lot. He loved you so much. He loved you just a few hours after he crawled out of bed with me in Hilton Head. Go tell it on the mountain, Nova. Go tell it on the motherfucking mountain. I did not care about myself or what Leon knew about what I'd done with Red. I was doing what so many others had done years before me while Leon was with me. I began planting seeds, working things to my advantage so Leon would act a certain way. I wanted him to be hostile and enraged when Red walked through the door. Even after my confession, Leon showed no such emotions. Gary and Razul had come in and were waiting for Red to come. I sent Charlie away with Norburn because I didn't want him there when that bastard came. Charlie had not been gone even 10 minutes when Red and Jerry was knocking on the door. Red had a big bandage wrapped around his head. He wouldn't look at me and made a beeline to the family room. Jerry asked me if I was okay, and I told him that it didn't matter how I was. All I wanted was some justice for my son. The next turn of events set me back. All the men went into the family room and closed the door behind them, shutting me out. In her fucking house. I felt I should have been there if nobody else was. I tried to go along with it and began to eavesdrop outside the door. I heard Red talking about Charlie if he had attacked him. I didn't hear anyone defending Charlie except Razul, who said, man, that's a child. What are you saying? I'd heard enough. I opened the door, walked in, and told them all that I wasn't going to be locked out. Charlie was my flesh and blood, and I was the only one that is 100% for him. It was my right to be here. No one protested, and I looked at Red and told him to go on with what he was lying about. I stood there with my arms folded, waiting for Red to respond. Well, like I was saying, I seen this in Charlie. He approached me He tried. I couldn't stand there and let him say anything else. I walked over to him, screamed, "You liar!" Then I backhanded him across his face. Red jumped up, pointed to his head, telling me what I had already done. I hit him again, and when he made the movement as if he would hit me back, Leon jumped between us and said, "You better not, motherfucker. I'll fuck you up. And what you did to that baby was low down." Leon began punching Red and beating on him. Red did very little to nothing to defend himself. All the rest of the men moved out of the way to let Leon administer justice. No police and no court, just straight to the penalty phase. Leon was in a beating frenzy, and Red was bleeding like a pig. Both of his eyes were closed and full of blood. Leon grew tired of hitting him, and it was as if he blanked out. He put his hands around Red's throat and started choking that nigga. And started choking him. I made no effort to try to stop what was happening, and I was enjoying every minute of it. But when Red began to change colors and his tongue protruded, everyone else started to panic. Razul ran over and told Leon to stop before he killed Red. He looked at me for help, but I stood mute and shrugged my shoulders. They yelled at Leon again to stop, but he wouldn't let go. Then Razul, Jerry, Marvin, and Gary began prying Leon's fingers free from Red's throat. Leon's face was snarled up like some kind of savage animal, and he bucked, sending Marvin and Razul flying back against the wall, crashing against it. Leon ran across the room with me right behind him. Leon went to the kitchen and found the bat, baby. It's batter up. I told him that he didn't need a bat, and he looked at me as if I had said nothing. I yelled for Gary, who was the biggest out there. He stood 6'5" and well over 260. He intercepted Leon, holding him while Marvin tried to wring the bat out of Leon's hands, yelling at Jerry to get Red out now. Jerry wasted no time in doing so. After that, Leon began to walk around the house, and everyone started to talk to him, trying to get him to cool down. I went upstairs, leaving them to do that. I still wasn't completely satisfied with Red's punishment, although I enjoyed seeing him beat to a bloody pulp and the life almost choked out of him. That day and the weeks that followed, Leon and I didn't talk or mention anything about Red. I did find out through Jared that Red had gone to lawyers Ed Bell and Lester Hudson, of all people, making noise about suing Leon for the beating that he took. I told Jerry to stop tripping and to let him go ahead and try it. When the court finds out why he got his ass kicked in the first place, he wouldn't get a fucking dime. I don't know what became of Red or his lawsuit, just like I didn't know about Leon. After all that had happened, it seemed it didn't matter to Leon what Red had done, because he started flying back and forth to California where Red was. I guess to start up, continue, or renew whatever kind of relationship they had. I was, at that time, completely in the dark, and I wouldn't find out about Leon's betrayal until months later. And that, my dear literary lovelies, is the end of chapter 18. Lovelies, I want to ask that you forgive me. I apologize for becoming so emotional during this chapter. But elder abuse and child abuse are two topics that will always get me heated and riled up. So I apologize, but I am not sorry. And I am looking forward to, at some point in this read, gaining great satisfaction from that Red character getting his fucking just treats. Because the same way Nova feels like it just wasn't enough, that's how I feel too. Honestly, he should have come up missing. And that's all I got to say about it. I'm out. I'll talk to y'all next time. Subscribe to the channel, making sure you hit the bell marked all so that you're notified of all of my new releases. That way, you never miss an episode of The Bookshelf, and you might even be turned on to some of the other offerings on the Variety channel that I bring to you. Also, please remember to hit the like and drop a comment, even if you just drop a few hearts or a few books in the chat to let me know that you were here and that you've enjoyed. I appreciate you, and I will return soon. Until next time, lovelies. Peace.